right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome back to the podcast of awesomeness. And yes, you don't have to tell me in my private DMs that I'm copying DX in the intro. I know I'm copying DX in the intro. Why wouldn't I? Such a huge fan of D Generation X growing up, and I believe everybody is, but that's usually how it is. That's how we enter the show, and that's how we pretty much start the entire show. But welcome back to the podcast of awesomeness to everybody who's watching this show. And this time we're doing a little bit things differently. Um, we're actually recording this prior to releasing it, so you probably would on our Facebook page. But this is actually not live right now, so we're trying to change some stuff and do something differently with our podcast. But you can still comment below. You can still like and share and tell us how you like the podcast. But without any further ado, let's get into the podcast for today. Just in case if you're watching this for the first time, if you haven't seen any of our previous episodes, go check on the REW Wrestling page. They're available on our wrestling page, so you don't have to go anywhere else to find them and blah blah blah. It's all there. You can find them. Now, let's coming back to the actual the guest of the podcast today. We have a very special guest today, and he has been actually around for some time, and he's actually a very talented wrestler. We actually know him, and on our show today, we thought we'll just get him and see if he is available for our show, and luckily he was available for our show. So on our show tonight, on the podcast of awesomeness, we have the great Dontavio. How are you doing today, man?
Good, man. Good. Real good. Glad to be a part of it.
Well, thank you for giving us your valuable time. I know it's like crazy out there. So, why would you how would you start by you telling us how have you been coping up with the entire pandemic, and everything has been on the lockdown. So how has your schedule been during all of this?
Well, outside of wrestling, what we would call my shoot job, that's pretty much been like an everyday thing. I don't really get a break from that. So really it's just working and now also doing like a little bit of video game streaming stuff as well. That way I could be interactive with fans and everything like that still, since there isn't any wrestling. But besides that, I mean, there's really not much we can do anymore. So it's pretty boring over here. So.
Yeah. All right. So when did you exactly?
You said what? When did I do what?
When did you start training? Like what year? Was it this year, last year? When did you start training?
No. Let's see. I started when I was probably like 15 or 16. I actually started training.
Oh.
Yeah. So, and I'm 21 now, so it's been like, I don't know, 5-6 years, something like that. That I've been interactive with wrestling professionally, doing matches and everything like that. It's been 3 years. But I've been involved in wrestling my whole life because of my dad. So I've been around it, watching him train, watching him train people, watching him wrestle in general, meeting people, stuff like that. Since I was real young. So I mean, it's been like all my life type of thing.
All right. Okay. So was your dad a big time wrestler as well, or was he just doing this or like a part time thing, or he wrestled full time?
He wanted to do it full time, but unfortunately times were different back then, and he didn't have all the time in the world because he was working a lot of hours to take care of me and my sister and my mom and everything like that. So I can't remember how long exactly he wrestled. He wanted to do it big time, obviously, but I want to say it was like a year or two, maybe probably like more close to a year, and then he ended up having to step away because a lot of behind the scenes stuff happened that was just not stuff he wanted to be involved with, and then he ended up stepping away, and then somehow or another, I got older, and we just jumped right back into it, and he trained me and trained a few of the other guys that wrestle now, and I ended up helping train them, and it's just like following down the line. But he did some. That was more or less like I would say like ECW days. Like he did more of the hardcore stuff, and before there was really like deathmatch wrestling. He did more like the hardcore type style wrestling and things like that. I mean, he still manages me and stuff and everything like that. But yeah, so.
All right. So that was your introduction to wrestling with all of that with your dad and everything. Aside from that, like you had your dad and you watched up growing him. You growing up, you watched him and everything. So aside from that, did you have? Were you also watching WWE or TNA?
Uh,
And if you were watching at the time, who was the one person who you idolized the most growing up?
um, see, I'm 21. I'll be turning 22 this month. So when I started watching, it was more or less the Attitude Era, and
Mhm.
so it's hard to say one. I mean, if you ask me just one person, the first person that comes to mind is the Hardy Boys, Jeff Hardy, of course, right off rip. Um, he really inspired me to do a lot. I mean, I remember when I was a kid watching it, jumping
Mhm.
off of bar stools and beating up my little teddy bears and all that stuff. So yeah, I would definitely say Jeff Hardy, right off of rip.
Okay. So when you watch Jeff Hardy and everything, and because we used to do this when we were kids, I'm not sure if that's the same across the board, but when we were kids and we used to watch like Hardy Boys or something like that, here in Pakistan, we used to just wrestle with our friends, and I used to wrestle with my brother, and we used to wrestle with like pillows and stuff like that. So and we got injured a lot. So did you like have anything happen like during the childhood days or when you're growing up and you were like fighting in the backyard or something and you got pretty injured? Has anything
Uh,
happened like that?
yeah, actually, that's kind of how my dad ended up stepping in and training us. Is
Mhm.
we had our little own organization in our backyard and everything. I mean, we eventually we did it on the ground, and then we built our little ring, and then we had a trampoline, and then we ended up moving up and actually having our own professional ring. I mean, we paid like $5,000 for it, but we ended up actually
Mhm.
having our own ring. And then the number one injury I can remember from that stuff was I tried like the little death match type wrestling, and uh, I got hit with one of the fluorescent light tubes across my back and completely split my back open. I think it was 14
Mhm.
stitches across my back, a bunch of stitches in my hand, all kinds of stuff. I mean, we did stupid stuff, jumping off of roofs and all kinds of stuff. But injury wise, that's the only thing I can really remember from like getting injured. I mean, everything was stupid and everything we did hurt because we didn't really know exactly what we were doing. But yeah, I think that's the only like injury I actually had from the backyard stuff.
Yeah. But that's still very brutal, having the stitches and everything. The
Yeah.
the worst we got to is like dislocated shoulders and everything because we like kicked each other into something and we flying into the cabinet door or something like that. So it was pretty stupid. But then what would
Yeah.
you do? Your kids, and the way they tell during their programming is not to try at home. That's
Hmm.
probably that's something that they should stop doing because everybody
Yeah.
does it. And
Yeah.
if people don't do it, then they probably won't have their future generation of stars because that's
Yeah.
how a wrestler is born. We're not normal people, to say the least, and we're not usually the rare kind of we are the rare breed. Like we like to get beat up for the living and stuff like that.
Mm. Yeah.
So coming to your days of training after that. So what what was the first time like what was your experience when the first time you entered a professional ring for the first you obviously did all the backyard stuff and you did a lot of crazy stuff like that, but the first day of actual training, and you stepped into an actual ring with like ropes and everything. What was that experience for you?
Um, well, ours was weird because like we literally, when I say we had a professional ring, like we had like a professional ring for the backyard. Like it was
Mm-hmm.
brought across the country with, or yeah, across the country. It was, yeah, I think it was pretty far away, but it came on a semi and everything. We had to unload it ourselves to carry it back there and put it together and stuff like that. I just remember the first time that we actually put it together and put the ropes on, and um, I just wanted to stand on the top rope just to see what it was like. Yeah, I just wanted to see what it was like, and actually, I like you feel adrenaline hits you, and this hits you, and that's hits you, and then you just stand on the top rope, and you're like, man, I wonder what it's like to be in front of like hundreds of people standing up here and this and that. You know what I mean? That was the first time I actually stepped in the ring, and the first thing I actually did. And then my mind just started racing of other things that I could do and how I could do this or how I could do that. And then the first time I actually stepped into like a school, if you would call it that, or a company's ring, we got the crap beat out of us. That's for sure. So the first time we got the crap beat out of us was pretty intense. But then again, though, like later on in the when we talk about other stuff, going to like me training people and stuff, it was like that's how I wanted to be trained. You know what I mean? Like you want to see who's tough, who's going to stick it out, and everything like that. So I mean, when I say we got the crap beat out of us, we walked away with some black eyes and bodies hurting and stuff like that. It was pretty tough. But the guy that trained us that time was actually somebody that trained with my dad when he was coming up. So they trained people as well. So we had it pretty rough because they're pretty old school with a lot of stuff. So, but that was the first one or two times that I was in a professional ring for the first time.
All right. So, did you ever get the chance to be a part of like Raw tapings or SmackDown tapings?
No, unfortunately, no. I never got that far. I'm trying to think if there was anything I even got offered. I mean, I don't know if you know AIW, but I had a tryout there. Yeah, that's about the most that I had with anything like that. Besides like bigger stuff, I've just worked with a few names. That's what we would call bigger stars in the business is names. Like Ricky Morton, Shane Douglas. My first show was actually X-Pac was there and wrestled. Who else was there? Bobby Fulton.
Okay. Those are known names, and when you're working with them, like I'm sure each match has given you some kind of experience with how to put it up and how to follow the lead and everything. But what was the most important thing that you took away from working with these experienced guys?
Just slow down. It's a lot. That's something a lot of these guys don't do is they rush a lot of their stuff. If you just slow down and just take your time. The crowd is what makes you, no matter what you do. The crowd is everything that has to do with the whole entire wrestling show. So if you don't have the crowd, you don't have a match. So definitely slow down, be humble, and respect your what would you I don't want to say elders, but respect your people that's been in there longer than you, your veterans.
Yeah. They pretty much paved the way, and then now you got the way to that's how you got your chance to shine. So speaking of like working with crowd and everything, like the only way that you can work with a crowd and make it effective is when you have a proper grounded character. Because if you don't have a character and you're just in the ring and you're just exchanging jabs and you're just doing some fancy flips, that doesn't really connect with the audiences nowadays. I mean, it used to back in the days when it was pretty new with Hardy Boys and everything, but now they've seen it all. So
Mhm.
without a character, you don't really connect. So how would you say, like, what is the best way to build a character in a wrestling ring world?
Be relatable. Find something that you can relate to. That's
Hmm.
that's what I was always told. Find something that you can relate to, that somebody out there in the crowd can grasp towards and understand. Because if they don't
Hmm.
understand you, then they don't understand what you're doing either. So that was my
Okay.
number one advice that I got
Like,
from character.
how would you describe your character, or I would say, like, how would you describe yourself as in when you're in the ring?
My character, I would just say, is a tough guy, man. It's the easiest way to
Hmm.
put it. I just go out there and punch people in the face. Really, that's my character. I don't really have a certain type of character. I'm not a scary guy. I'm not a one-sided flippy guy or a one-sided technical guy. I can do both.
Hmm.
I just go out there and I beat people up. That was my main thing. Never scared of anything and never back down from anyone.
Hmm. So something like what Kevin Owens did back when he first started back in WWE.
Yeah, a lot of people have actually, like, when they've seen me, they've said something about Kevin Owens, that I reminded them
Mhm.
of Kevin Owens, or I looked like him a little bit, or this or that, or my moveset was kind of like it, or whatever. So yeah, I've heard Kevin Owens
Mhm.
a few times.
All right. No, I do see that resemblance a little bit. That's why I've mentioned Kevin Owens. Um, the other thing that I wanted to ask you, because with character that comes a little thing which is becoming very very rare nowadays in pro wrestling, and that's kayfabe.
Mm,
And people, especially I've seen that a lot in like indies thing, especially in PWG, and like stuff like what Young Bucks used to do. I don't think they're doing it anymore in AEW. Like stuff they used to do with Candice, when Kevin Owens was Kevin Steen, and the word kayfabe got thrown around on the floor a lot. So how would you feel that entire thing, that entire the larger than life character thing, which made wrestling popular in the first place, is only limited to a few companies? How would you say? What is your take on it?
um, kayfabe's dead. There's there's no way to really bring it back anymore. I mean, when when I when I came up and I was studying, that was my biggest thing, is like figuring out kayfabe and figuring out how to bring it back and blah blah. But there's no way to do that anymore. Kayfabe's completely dead. Um, I mean, you could put on a good match and you could sell that you hate somebody, or you could, blah blah blah. But it's not. Nobody's gonna really believe it.
Mhm.
Kayfabe isn't like back in the day. Like I did when I did Ricky Morton's seminar. They used to there was no talking at shows. They used to be on one side, heels were on one side, faces were on the other side. Like there was no way to kill kayfabe back then, really.
Mhm.
With kayfabe, like I said, there's no way to bring it back, and no matter how hard you try, it doesn't matter. I mean, really, the closest you can get to kayfabe nowadays is a good storyline, but that's even hard now sometimes too. So
Yeah, because now people are mentally trained to understand that it's okay. These two people are fighting on the camera, but they're really not enemies. And that
hmm
entire thing that used to exist back in '90s, that's all gone.
yep.
And one thing that's also gone is predictability. I mean, the predictability is there, but unpredictability, where you don't know what's going to happen next week, where you don't know what's going to happen on Raw, what's going to happen on WrestleMania. Now, thanks to the dirt sheets, everybody has every information what's going to happen on Raw, what was going over, and what like that. So, would you also say that that's something that also out of hands, like social media ruined everything
Yeah,
with
so social
wrestling?
media is probably the worst thing that happened to wrestling too. That's why not to throw any shade or anything towards WWE or any company out there, but
Yeah.
it's just not interesting anymore. You can tell what's going to happen the next week and things like that. I mean, you can bring new people in and stuff like that, but it's not hard to figure it out. They've done the same storylines for years, and most of these guys use the same 5 moves every match. That's why I like a lot of the indie shows, especially ones that don't have a lot of following behind them, because the storylines that have already been done in WWE can be done again, but they don't expect it from these little indie guys or whatever you want to say. So, yeah, social media definitely ruined wrestling as well, or the business in general, just like kayfabe. So,
Yeah. No, you're right about that, and I think it's mostly because of social media and how people react to it, and all these different YouTube channels now that that's been reporting everything about it and stuff like that. So that's one thing. But let's hope like no other aspects of wrestling, like there are many other aspects that they don't get ruined in the future as well. The other aspect that about the pro wrestling world that's only limited to indies right now, that's haven't made its way to the modern day WWE or AEW. I'm not sure about AEW, but I haven't seen that on WWE, and that's intergender matches. So that's something that's still with the indies and like other promotions and like other countries. What would you say is the main reason that they want to avoid intergender matches on mainstream wrestling on WWE or like AEW?
you said, why do they want to avoid it?
Like, why aren't they doing it? That would be the more compatible question.
I don't know, man. Like, because I on the indies, you see people wrestle all the time. Intergender, it's not a big deal. You know what I mean? I think AEW will end up doing it soon. But the bad thing is nowadays, like, you don't have the Attitude Era anymore. You don't have people that's not always like getting butthurt about little things in the business, or getting their feelings about little stuff. And our generation now is just a bunch of complainers and stuff. So it's like, I don't know if you ever actually see it besides like the little stuff like they did at the Rumble with Randy Orton and Nia Jax and stuff like that. I don't think, I really don't think we will end up seeing it in the WWE. And if we do, it won't be anything spectacular. But a lot of people get in their feelings and they get so butthurt nowadays that you probably won't end up seeing it. Honestly, I don't understand it. I don't understand why they avoid it anyways. They went through the same training we did. So,
but it's funny how you mentioned about that Orton and Nia Jax angle at the Rumble, because I remember everybody loving it,
yeah,
and everybody enjoying that moment, like when that happened. Sure, it was a bit comedic in how it was executed, but I seem to remember people loving it. But okay, that's what Vince, and Vince likes to do what he wants to do and all that. So that's really with him. I hope AEW does more of that. Would you ever be like comfortable doing an intergender match?
no,
Would you do
yeah,
it?
sure. Yeah, I've been in talks with a few promoters that have wanted to do a female match. Yeah, I wouldn't mind it.
Okay, well that's great. I mean, I'm sure your fans and your friends would love to see it. Uh, when we talk about a match like a wrestling match, and you have been involved in like wrestling matches for about like what 5-6 years now,
Yeah, something
what
like
would you
that.
say makes what would you say makes a wrestling match an entertainment filled match, or like a good wrestling match? What are the main factors?
Um, I think it really, in my opinion, I think it really depends on your promoter and who they put you
Mhm.
against for one. Because I mean, if you can put people in the seats and you can make people show up to want to see the match in general, there's your starting
Mhm.
point. And then from there, it's really on the person you're facing too. I mean, um, we all know kayfabe's dead. We all know how matches get put together and everything like that. So really, man, it's just a story. I mean, if you can get in the ring and you can connect with the fans and really put them on a coaster ride and make them, go in and out the oohs and ahs. That's to me what makes a wrestling match. If you can make people care. My biggest thing when I had a wrestling match was um, when the person leaves, make sure they're talking about your match. It doesn't matter if you started the show or ended the show or you even after intermission, whatever. If they remember your match at the end of the night, then you did what you were supposed to do.
Yep. And that's we had so many podcasts before, but I think this is our 28th podcast, and we like get people from all over the country, from all over the world, basically from Italy, France, and Germany, and Canada. And the one answer that has been very consistent is that my last question that I asked you about what makes a good match, and you had the same theory about it. So I think that's one thing that I'm glad that's been the same across the board wherever we go, because we all love and share the same passion for wrestling. It's like music has no boundaries and stuff like that. So that's
Mhm.
good. So what would you say is like, where do you see yourself going into the next 2 3 years? Because like people usually ask, oh, where do you see yourself in the next 10 years? And people usually say, 10 years is a bit long time. So I want to know where Dontavio would be in the next 2 3 years.
Um, I'm not sure. To be honest with you, there was a lot of stuff that had happened, and I had stepped away recently for a little bit, especially with all this, pandemic and all that stuff going on. And we really don't even know when stuff's going to start back up and actually get back to normal, anyways. So
Yeah.
I kind of took a little bit of time away from wrestling right now, and doing a little gaming, streaming, and all that stuff. But I don't know, honestly. A lot of it depends on what really is going to happen in the next few months. I think, honestly, with all this pandemic stuff, um,
Mhm.
all this stuff calms down and everything. I don't know. I definitely, I definitely love wrestling, and I definitely will always have a part of wrestling. I mean, no matter what I do, and I'll
Mhm.
always be around it no matter what. Now, match wise, I know I have a few more in me and a few more things I want to do. I mean, I've done steel cage, I've done ladder, I've done street fights, hardcore, casket matches, tag, singles, everything you can think of, won championships and everything. So I don't know. I mean, it's something that I'll always love and I'll always be a part of, no matter what I do. But I mean, I know I definitely have a few more in me, and there'll definitely be a few more videos. But in the next few years, honestly, I don't know. No, I'm kind of just taking it day by day anymore and seeing where life takes me. Um,
All right. Okay. So what one thing that that happens with me when and it happens very often. Uh, you get these weird visions, like when you're laying down and you're trying to sleep. You're getting these all weird kind of visions of what you would do in the ring, and you're thinking of all the crazy variations. Okay, I would do this, and I would slide down, do schoolboy and stuff like that. Does that happen to you too?
yeah, yeah, all the time. I would have, I mean, shows get put together at least. I like a promoter to tell me at least like 2 weeks in advance. So I would I would
Mhm.
I would know who I'm wrestling, and then I'd message them, and I'm like, hey, blah blah, this and that. I have this idea, and let's do this and that, like 2 weeks in advance. And for the next 2 weeks, no matter how many shows it was, I would have everything running through my head the whole match every night, staying up,
Mhm.
writing stuff down. Like it was, and then I would go back, and if I thought of some type of move set or a variation, I would go and study it, and I would perfect it as much as possible the next day in training and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, never stops.
Yeah, it's always in the head. It's kind of like a voice that always keeps going and going. One question before we kind of wrap up our things here in the podcast. Unfortunately, we do have a limited time available now. We have a set duration we have for the podcast as a theme. But one thing that I wanted to ask you, if you ever get to have the chance, or I suppose you get two contracts in the mail tomorrow. One is from NXT, the other one is from AEW. Which one are you signing?
NXT.
NXT, and why would you pick NXT over AEW?
I guess the biggest reason is because I grew up watching WWE and WWF in general, and that's no matter what anybody says, if they don't like WWE now or whatever. If you were a wrestling fan, that was always your dream. If you wanted to be a wrestler, was to be in WWE. So I definitely go to NXT.
All right, great. So, Dontavio, unfortunately, we have reached at the end of our time for the podcast, and for our final few, we have about 2 minutes left. So, what we do usually is what I do is we have a little thing on our podcast. We call that the lightning round. And so, in the lightning round, what happens is that I basically ask like some very lightning fast questions really fast, and you don't have the time to think about it, and you just have to say the first word that comes into your mind when you hear that question. So it's kind of like a quick lightning round and stuff like that, but it's mostly related to like how you would answer it. Okay. All right, so are you ready for it? All right, let's go. All right, so you don't have to time to think, just give me the first word you think about it. All right, your questions, Dontavio, texting or talking, what would you prefer?
Texting.
Texting. Last song that you may have downloaded?
Something from Polo G. I don't know. I don't remember.
All right. Your favorite wrestling theme?
Like theme song or person?
Like the theme song of a wrestler?
Probably Jeff Hardy.
Jeff Hardy. All right. Your most favorite wrestling move? Could be finisher, could be anything.
Probably the rock bottom.
Okay. All right. If you were to build the Hall of Fame, name two people you would put in Hall of Fame.
Undertaker and Rey Mysterio.
I think Undertaker would be by next year. He just retired, so chances are looking pretty good for Taker. All right. Favorite holiday of yours?
Christmas.
Christmas. All right. One final question. Fill in the blank. So you have to fill that blank. All right. The fill in the blank. Which was it? Oh yeah. Dontavio will be blank.
Known.
Good. Got it. All right. Well, that was very epic, and you didn't take any much time. We usually do give out. Our guests do take some time to think about it because they get confused. Like they don't want to say something stupid or anything incredibly awkward with that. But man, you were awesome. It was awesome talking about how you grew up and everything. It's definitely crazy how we, out of nowhere we built this podcast, and now we're talking to you. So the pandemic isn't really all that bad. It did bring a lot of people's creativity out. So we just hope that it ends pretty soon. So everybody go back to their normal lives, and you start building up on your dream again. But thank you again for giving your time, Dontavio. We hope that wherever you go, whatever you do, you'll be having the best of luck from us, from our company, from everybody from Pakistan.
Thank you.
All right, Dontavio, thank you for joining us, and thank you everybody who joined us today on the podcast of Awesomeness. We hope that you have liked this episode, and if you do, like, share, and subscribe to our channel, and share it with your friends. Tell them, yeah, it's a podcast about wrestling. We have great talent, just like Dontavio. We'll put the links for Dontavio's channel as well, so you can go and link and have a good day. Bye bye.
All right.